Welcome back to 365 Unlimited. Today, as you can tell, we are sitting next to each other, home for Thanksgiving break, back from school, back from baseball. I'm personally done with football as well, so we're back for the holiday, going to enjoy some free time that we got. So we decided, let's sit down, do a podcast together in person. So it'll be nice to kind of sit down, go back and forth with each other. Today we got an interesting topic that we want to touch on, something that we haven't really individually depicted, outside of maybe throwing it in there on some episodes where it's not a major topic. But today we want to make it a major topic. Um, but before that, continue to like, subscribe, take a look at all of our videos, share them for us, give us all the feedback in the world. We appreciate that. As we continue to grow, take the next steps with what we're doing. Growth is a huge thing. We want to continue to grow, continue to learn from you guys as well. But before that, before you continue to do that for us, please check out our two sponsors, Driftless Quality Wear and Bocker Auto Group. They do a lot for us. I know I put a post out there the other day on just some people that have influenced me greatly over the last year and a half, 2 years at this point. And Delbert Bunker with Bocker is a major influence for us. So continue to support him and what he does for our 815 community. But today, we're going to touch on a topic, burnout within the sports world, and what it does to the athlete, and even what it does to the coaching world as well, because burnout comes from any
happens anywhere.
Yeah, from any realm of sport. I know I personally felt it before. I know a lot of people don't tend to believe that it is there, that it is existed within the sports world, but in my opinion, it is, and I'll let Gannon touch on his opening thoughts on what he thinks about what burnout is.
No, it just varies. I mean, you get burnout in your everyday work, your life, your job. I mean, pretty much anything you get if you don't prioritize yourself and other things in kind of a certain order. I mean, I wouldn't say it's a right or wrong order, but it all depends on how you do it, the load management, and I think you see it specifically with youth within the sports scene a lot more than you do in other scenarios, just of the overwork and amount of time that they're on the field, court, whatever it is, for their practices, for their games, as they're 10 to 12 years old. And I think that has a lot of effect down the road, not even physically, mentally, but psychologically, just going forward in everyday life, just how they look at everything, because they based everything growing up off of sports and how much they were spending time there and all that, which defeats the purpose. And I think that's where the burnout happens, when people, kids, whatever it is, they don't enjoy what they're doing every single day when they used to at one point, just because certain controlled or uncontrolled factors kind of, created an opinion and stance for them on it. But there's a lot of different ways you can get into it depending on what type of scene it is where the burnout's happening. But I know we want to start with some youth sports, and I think that's definitely one of the major weaknesses of it.
No, and I agree, because I think when you start as a youth getting into sports, I mean, more than likely you're getting involved in sports at a young age because your parents want you to.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying there's not love for the game for the kid.
You're trying stuff out, and burnout's not trying stuff out.
No, and I do think there comes a point where, like, as a youth playing sports growing up, you start to see the fun in the game. Because obviously, like I said, I do think that when you're initially starting, that the parents may have a say in what sports you're going to play, and at least give it a try before you decide you don't want to play. I think certain kids fall in love with the game, and certain kids don't fall in love with the game. But through the course of playing the game, as you continually get older, I think you start to see kids that are playing meaningless games. And I'm not saying regular season versus postseason or such and such, but even just, I know us growing up, the amount of travel ball games that we played personally, for me, was too much. I don't know. And I mean, looking back on it, it was a blast, and it's the best memories I've ever made. But at the end of the day, I mean, I got 2 years into college from my youth. I'm still thinking back to my youth, and my youth is what made me not necessarily want to continue to play the game anymore, because I personally felt like I had played so much, I didn't feel like I could get anything else out of the game. And I think that's a huge question right there, is like, what do we say to athletes that say, I can't get anything else out of this game? Like, where do we go from there,
I think the biggest thing, what you were saying and all that, it goes hand in hand as the coaches in a lot of this.
Yeah.
Because, if you had something different for the collegiate coaching, whatever it is, the situation, I think it cannot prolong the burnout, but it just helps the burnout and maybe not completely happen at once.
Yeah.
Because there's certain ways, I think it's the whole approach of how coaches, and it starts with the youth with burnout. You're not, not every kid's going to like the sport or love the sport that they're playing when they're fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh grade, whatever, even high school. Let's be honest, there's athletes in their sports that are just playing it to play for parents, politics, whatever it is. But if they can at least get certain lessons and values kind of pulled out from those coaches, that has nothing to do with the sport that they can at least take away, and it's something that it doesn't look at as a burnout because they're taking something, but that's not happening a lot. It's just what are you doing to win and lose on the field, which I get. It's how sports is and how you get older. It's kind of just the way of how sports is and all that. But there also has to be a way that the kids at a younger age can get certain things out of their coaches and meaningful stuff. That's more than just on the field or court, understanding that you have the teammates, the brotherhood with that type of thing. That I think that's kind of one of the good things that I've had at college was, obviously we win 40 plus games a year and are top 10 team in the nation majority of the time. That all helps. That winning takes care of a lot of things.
Yeah.
But there's also a way our coach looks at everything, each daily process with the grades, with getting in to see the athletic trainer with your body, having downtime with your teammates. And that all has nothing to do with specifically on the field, but it's still helping to work for on the field goals, but it's also helping to prepare you for the next step in your life. And I think that are the fine lines that even if some of the sports success that you don't like as all the way as a middle schooler, but you can get some of those lessons and stuff out of life from the coaches even then. Because I know we've had good coaches and stuff growing up. We still keep in contact with. I still talk to my high school baseball coach, Sean Dasher. I mean, every time I'm home, it's just certain, and it's not even the baseball stuff. It's everything besides that. And that's why I enjoyed the sports scene growing up and playing on it. But I know that's not what everybody is getting the experience or ever have that experience, and that's the sad part of it. But I think the coach can go a long way in just how he attacks the practice games, everyday stuff, when it's the same thing, ideally. Yeah. You're doing the same drills, the same games, even though it's just different words, different names for all of it. It's still the same thing, but what can you do to make those 2 hours, whether they're 12 years old or 22 years old, really enjoyable? And I think that goes a long way in it, in preventing the burnout.
Yeah, I think the word enjoyable is key right there, because I know when I started thinking about this topic, the one question that popped into my head is, how does a kid fall in love with the game? And I think this question can be posed to anyone in the world. I mean, you start to think about people in their jobs. How does one fall in love with their job? How does one wake up every single day and not feel like they're going to a job? And I think that's the one thing that crossed my mind, is understanding that if kids are going to a sporting event and they don't feel like it's not necessarily a priority. If they don't, I'm trying to figure out.
Not important. It's not something they want to do.
Yeah, if they're going to a sporting event feeling like they're not obligated to be there, but at the same time they want to be there,
and they can enjoy certain aspects, and that's what I was saying with the coach. That's a kid, but kid can quit a sport, or not even quit, just stop playing when they get into high school.
Yeah.
But could have learned so much from a coach for 2 or 3 years and never touch that ball or whatever the sport is again, but pick something up from that and take that with them. And those are the little things that are that's all getting lost in the shuffle now, because it's just who's the best athlete, who can score the most points, who can do this on a field, court, etc. in that moment. And it's also the instant gratification that the coaches are falling into.
No, yeah, 100%. I think where I was going with that point that I made is that I don't necessarily think the love for the game is enough. Because personally, I grew up. No. I loved baseball. I loved basketball. I loved football. I loved playing all of them. I loved being a part of the team atmosphere. For the most part, I loved all my coaches growing up and even into the high school ranks. But I don't think that just loving the sport is enough.
No.
And what I mean by that is I think that there truly has to be passion behind it. And maybe not so much within the youth world. The passion doesn't necessarily need to be there, in my opinion, just because you're a kid. You're a kid. You're testing the waters. And I think that's where parents, I think if you're a parent and you're trying to understand your kid not loving a sport growing up, and they feel like they're already burnt out and they don't want to play anymore, I think that's something that we need to do a better job of in our society, is understanding that if the kid don't want to play, he or she doesn't want to play. And sports aren't be all, see all. Like, it's not something that everyone is fit for. But I do think if you look at it, certain kids that have passion behind the game and they continue to show that passion's only going to grow increasingly over time. And I do think, yes, there are instances 100% along the way, just as there are in life, where you're going to hit the bumps on the road and you may get a coach you don't like. You may run into a teammate who you feel like is not giving you the ball, or we're all going to run into those obstacles where we feel like our passion is gone, but in reality, that's just testing our love for the game at the older age.
Yeah.
But diving back into the youth world, I do think that we as parents just need to understand that certain kids may not ever truly have the passion. And I mean that because there's certain talented young kids that I know personally.
Yeah, that just don't like playing sports.
Don't like playing sports. And it's parents pushing them to play. And yes, maybe they will play their whole life. And they may even play for as long as we have, or as long as I did, and you still are. They may do that.
But what are they going to look back on that? It's to look like a waste of time and years.
Well, and even if the talent's there.
Even if they were good. I mean, I saw Martellus Bennett on I Am Athlete recently, and he was just talking about that he could go back. He just wouldn't go back and be a football player again. Yeah. Just how much money he got taken away from being himself for personality things and all that, and the physical beating, etc. Just all that. He said his house growing up right now, his household that he's raising with his 2 or 3 kids, is an art house. Mm. Artistic, there's a lot of artwork,
Well, and he did that
abstract, that's all. But that's all what he wants. He said it's not a sports family. He said if they're going to want to get into sports, they're going to find it out on their own. Way, Instead of him, like he said, he was 8 to 10. He was on a football field. Like that sounds really easy to do, but people can go out. Obviously, he's made money and can do certain types of things like that. But to just have that shift, and it's so beneficial because it is. And that's the thing when you said when they don't want to play. If they're young enough, that doesn't mean they won't come back to that sport or another sport down the road. They might figure out that they kind of miss being on it, but you got to let them figure that out on the road or along the road with their journey. I think that's the hard part for parents.
Honestly, before I forget these 2 points, I want to make 2 points about what you just said. I think there's a misconception with parents where they feel like throwing their kids into sports at a young age is a way of keeping them physically active. A way of keeping their minds moving, and they're not just locked up inside playing video games all the time.
Which is fine.
It is 100%.
Yes, we're not saying not try it.
Yeah, no, 1,000%, and I agree with that to an extent, because at the same time, I do think that if you're forcing and forcing and forcing it to happen, obviously, I just think it's a life lesson in general. The more you force something to come, the less it's likely it's going to happen, and if it does happen, it's forced. And what are the odds that it's going to work out for the best? I know speaking from experience, back in my youth, like growing up, like I almost felt like now that like I'm way, way older enough to look back on it and resonate with it, I almost feel like when like growing up, like there were certain games, practice especially, and not many people like practice, but growing up, there were certain games where I'd be like, why am I here? Like, what am I doing? And like that was even as a kid.
Yeah.
So it's like, and it's not like I didn't have love for the game, because I'm trying to think back to it, obviously. But I do think the love for the game was there. I just don't think as a kid your passion shines through enough to resonate with you to where you're like, maybe this is something I can do.
Yeah,
for the next 10,
I think it's also that's part of the childhood and the growing up that you don't really know. And I think that you're from day to day, second to second, your thoughts are changing and whatever you want to do. I think that's
a big thing.
That's I think the part of it that you're just going to experience. You're going to know whether you like it or not. And I think that's then some people figure that out at the high school time, not when they're 10, 12 years old with the sports and anything else. But one thing you said earlier was like, you might not have a coach you like, you might not have teammates you like. I think those are another one of the aspects, like I was building on earlier, that you can take away from a team, a coach, and that has nothing to do with the actual sports and the physical side of it. And those scenarios, in my opinion, you can't get growing up in other situations. You can't, you can start working when you're 16, 17 at a fast food place all day. You're going to see real world stuff. And I get that you're going to be able to do that and make money. That's going to be the rest of your life. But doing that stuff when you're learning and adapting, going through maturity, like all the different types of things when you're growing up is huge, because you don't you don't know what you're getting yourself into each year with a new team, new teammates, especially at the college ranks. There's so many people transferring in, leaving each year, graduating. And to see it, like in my eyes, teammates from all across the world and all those types of things, it's like, holy crap, you're so diverse in a 30-man team that it feels like it's 100 peoples that, 100,000 of people you're talking to because of all the different stuff they've gone through, they've experienced, and you don't get that when you're in your 17, 18, 19, 20, even in high school, depending on where you go and how big your school is. You don't get that opportunity and anything else to learn while also competing and having that edge on the sports side of it, which if you care enough to be there and like sports, then that just adds even more. And those two things together are a lot of life lessons to be learned. And again, it goes hand in hand, which having the right coach, the right people around you, the right support system, those all go hand in hand in making it a better experience. But there's an experience out there, regardless of it, to learn and take stuff from sports that has nothing to do with the wins and losses or the stats.
So let me ask you an open-ended question where I because a lot of people, you think of burnout, it's just going to be negative. But what do you think, how do I word this? For when it comes to burnout, what are the positives and what are the negatives to it? Because everything has a positive to it in a sense. Do you think that burnout is necessarily bad all the time, or do you think burnout can be good for some athletes?
I mean, there's positives in everything in my estimate, but I think the negatives definitely outweigh the positives in this because especially when you're talking youth and young people, you're looking at a negative of a relationship that could at the worst damage a relationship with a parent and a kid, because we've seen that happen with people friends of ours. It's just not, it's a parents living through their kids' dreams in high school and growing up in travel sports, and that's where a lot of the burnout, the really negative burnout's happening. It's younger and younger, and then again it's transitioning into injuries because they're pushing these guys and girls so hard when they're not even fully developed as a body to go through all these strength trainings and all that. So I think those are definitely negatives, but there's also the positive. Like you said, you're going to understand what you want and don't want. The problem is the extent of the burnout. I think that's also the advantages and disadvantages. If it's a prolonged burnout and you're holding out through high school, graduating just to make your dad happy because you played football, that's going to be a way more negative impact than your parent realizing it within a couple years in middle school and say, hey, I don't think he or she is enjoying the game, and again, that comes back on the parents. So it's the kids are almost tied a little bit when you're younger to trying to figure that out. But if somebody can recognize it and kind of help them with that and see that it is or isn't what they want to do, then that's kind of going to lessen or worsen burnout, I think. But in certain scenarios, I think the negatives are way worse than the positives in this.
Yeah, and
it's not just physically, it's not just mentally, it's psychologically, it's all of them.
Yeah, it's all.
The longer it is, I think it's the longer the impact's going to be.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I do think that the negatives in this situation outweigh the positives. Although I do want to touch on the positives, and I think when you touch on the positives for burnout, you start to think about, well, what does burnout do for me in my life? What does it do for my life? And I do think that if you have to face it, and you go through it as a kid growing up, or even into the ranks that we played in, playing in high school, playing in college, which a good majority of youth athletes are going to continue and want to play in high school. So for you,
that's the thing, they're going to want to, but
you may not.
It's one thing to go on and do it. That's the fine line in all this.
But my point is, I think for an athlete that is struggling and feels like they're forced to play, and you feel like you have to ride it out, and you don't know what to do, you don't know how to think about it, I think just one thing to keep in the back of your mind, just handle it like it's adversity. Just handle it like it's a situation in your life where you have no other choice and you have to fight through it. It sucks because, like, we're sitting here talking about this, and you as an athlete may be like, well, I can just quit tomorrow. But obviously, you may have parents or you may have people behind the scenes that are, one, counting on you, two, feel like they make you feel like you have to play, and three, you're stuck. Like, if you have those feelings and you can't quit, or you say you're gonna, but you can't, I think just understand that it is adversity. It is something in your life that you're having to go through, and it sucks. And even if you are freakishly talented and you're the best player on the team, but you don't want to be there and you're just going through the motions, try to find ways that you can utilize it to better yourself physically, mentally, spiritually, psychologically, whatever. Well, like we said, it all comes full circle, and it's only going to make you better for your life in the future. So when you're sitting there thinking about, man, I don't want to go to practice, man, I don't want to play in this game, it's just not for me. Well, there's going to be things in life that aren't for you. I'm taking this a different approach just because we've touched on these negatives, but I do think there is a slight positive to burnout, and
Yeah, there's another one. If you want to finish that.
Yeah, I'm just saying, when it comes down to it, think of burnout hand in hand with adversity, like the things we're going to go through in life, the encounters, the bumps, everything in life. If you don't want to be there, you don't want to play, handle it like you would any other tough situation and keep fighting, keep going through it. Don't just go through the motions. Find a way to bring out the best in yourself, because you're going to face a lot of freaking adversity in the work life, in college, as you get older. This is just advice back to the youth, kids growing up. Uh, I mean, sports are probably the toughest thing you're gonna have to do when you're a kid. You're not gonna be doing much outside of sports. You're not gonna be working a job. You're not gonna be doing all those other extracurricular things, but enjoy it. And it seems cliche because we're talking about you don't want to be there, and I'm saying enjoy it. But it's a two-handed thing. Adversity, it comes full circle. Fight through it. Continue to battle with it every single day. But yeah, go give you a point.
Yeah, no, I think like I said, the different versions of the burnout. I think there's even like a burnout with me in ball. Like it's nothing like it, but it's been.
Well, it comes in waves, too.
And it's been over way over half my life. Probably 60-70% of my life now has been baseball since I was 8 years old, like 7-8 years old, like. But it's also the other stuff that comes with it that if you can find those fine lines and understand that there's more meanings to it than just the sport, I think that burnout won't happen, or it's going to be very minimal when you do get done. Because it's the actual baseball stuff and all that, it could be done here pretty soon, and it's going to be, well, I've had 20 some years of playing, or whatever, being alive, and then 10 plus years of playing it. But I think that burnout, it's kind of a closing of like a chapter book thing, whatever time it is in your life when you're stopping to playing the sport or whatever it is. Yeah, you're burning out, but you're also closing that and going to be having new energy and something to move on to. And I think getting on to grad school, going on to the real world, getting a job, working, all that is going to create, I think, a new fire and competition in myself, because I won't have baseball every single day. That takes part of me. But that part of me was one of the strongest things growing up. You know what I mean? Because I put so much time and effort into it. So I think if some of that time and energy that I 3-4 hours constantly, whenever I'm at school, was putting into baseball every day for weights, school, whatever it is, I think that's going to be some negative burnout in the moment, but stuff in the long run that's going to end up turning out to be a positive and having some burnout, because exactly that's not what you're going to want to do or do again, regardless of the example. Yeah, it sucked and you burnt out from it, but you're not going back to it, and you got something new to look forward to. So that was kind of
and
another positive.
I'll go with you on that as well, because I'll tell you right now, if I wouldn't have got burnt out from baseball, what we're doing right now probably wouldn't exist. And that's not to say that you should go quit and be done with something that you're enjoying. But at the end of the day, I know for me personally, I'd played baseball growing up my whole life. Everyone knows that at this point with how much we've talked about our personal lives. But growing up, I played the sport for so long, got to college, played 2 years, committed to play at a 4-year, and realized that was the end of the chapter. That was the end. So I closed the book. And as soon as that book closed, I had to find a way to take that passion from one thing and move it over into something else. And so instead of just sitting on the couch for an extra 3 to 4 hours a day, instead of having practice or a game, the energy was spent into something else. So I had to formulate, how was I going to do that? What were the next steps I was going to take? Well, I think as a person, as a human, you need to analyze what your passions are. And it may not be the sports world, because I know Gannon and I, we stuck in the sports world. Like I'm probably here my whole life. Like it's what I want to do. It's what I'm passionate about. But for you, you could close that book of baseball or football or basketball or volleyball, whatever it is. You close that book. It could be artistic
chapter.
Stuff. Yeah. You close the chapter. Yeah,
your book's a life.
Facts.
Or your life's a book.
So you close that chapter. It could be drawing. It could be painting. It could be reading books. It doesn't matter what it is. But if you find a passion within, then that is another chapter opening up, and it's going to continue to lead to new and new chapters until your life closes, and then that book closes. So understand that burnout, like I said slightly, when you were talking, burnout comes in waves, and I think it's situational as well, especially as you get into the older ranks and the book of life in general.
Yeah, there'll be daily burnouts.
100%. And what I mean, yeah, coming in waves like that is you may wake up and be burnt out one day, and the next day it's a Friday, and you're like, oh yeah, let's go to work. Let's go to work. But yeah, you're gonna have your Mondays. You're gonna have your Mondays. You're gonna have your Wednesdays where it's midweek and you're ready to be done. That's the same thing with sports, life, whatever it is in general. Burnout comes in waves, and it is situational. I've seen coaches that were just in a bad place, didn't want to coach that team, not necessarily the team, but didn't want to be in that school system anymore. Found a new school system, and that started to click for them. It's situational. There's certain people you don't want to be around. There's certain things that are happening or occurring around you, but take it with a grain of salt and find the positives within it. And when you do find a new situation, try to find the passion in that new situation. I think that's what I value the most about the things that I've done post baseball career and moving into a podcast, moving into other things and better things, is I realized one chapter may close, but that new chapter is always going to be there. It's just a matter of what you're going to write on the page. Well, you truly, you write the next page.
Yeah.
And I think that's something especially for the youth to understand, because all of our experience and all of the players and athletes and coaches we've interviewed over the course of 2 years now is understanding that this all goes back to the youth. This goes back to helping.
Starts.
Yeah. Because that's what we want to do, is formulate a plan for these youth athletes to understand what we've been through is what you're going to go through. So take it. So take the advice there and understand that there are going to be rough patches with burnout. You're going to understand that you may not want to play the game anymore, but find the light, find the positives, and understand that the next chapter will not write itself. You get to choose to write it, and how you want to write it is up to you. But that's honestly, those are probably my final thoughts on it.
Yeah, I mean, I'll wrap it. I mean, there's a misconception growing up that there's like a right way or wrong way to do stuff. Like in any way that your school, I mean, anything. I'm not saying don't go to school and don't do your schoolwork, but even the way that the certain classrooms and technology, it's just altered everything from when we started school to the way we're doing stuff in college now. Is obviously not the curriculum and the material, but just the interactive way. It's all going to change. So like nothing's ever what you think is going to be normal or set in stone right now is never going to be that way. Maybe tomorrow, a month, year, whatever.
Oh, it changes.
So it's just like, I don't know. I just encourage people to whatever they want to do it, whatever they like, even if it's the smallest things. Some people don't like it, even if you like video games at certain times. Some people are with social imbalances and they don't feel comfortable in social settings, but they feel comfortable talking to people playing the game. Yeah. I've heard that before. There's people with certain things that they can't, but that's what they like to do. So go do it. And there's millions of money out there to make off of that type of stuff. If you get in the right area and care enough about it and put yourself into it. But that's like even getting up, growing up. Just even the kids, whatever you want to do. If you want to go play outside, go do those certain things. Don't just because it's not everybody else is doing or not what your parents tell you to do.
Just because it's not the norm.
That's what I'm saying. Just whatever makes you feel comfortable and happy, it should be the number one thing that you do. Because at the end of the day, you got nobody else besides yourself. And that's 100%. The biggest thing. What are you going to do to make yourself happy and create that self-confidence about yourself? Because if not, you're not going to have a fun life.
I agree. I think the last thing I want to say is just be comfortable with the uncomfortable. And there's going to be situational things within your life that are rough, that are tough, and burnout's one of those things within the sports world, within the work world, and just find a way to balance it. But hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Continue to like, view, subscribe, give us all the feedback in the world. I hope you guys enjoyed the holidays. Christmas time coming up, full-fledged.
Safe holidays.
Yeah, be safe. Take care of your people. Enjoy the time with your friends and family. Take full advantage of it, and we will catch you guys soon.